I am Michel Isnard, and I am the Vice President in charge of the enterprise organization at GitLab, covering Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I joined GitLab a few months ago after I assessed the absolute necessity for enterprises which want to engage into a successful digital transformation journey to adopt a DevSecOps approach. My mission at GitLab is to structure the enterprise organization across EMEA, to develop the business through both direct sales and partner sales, and also to set up the foundations for a local and long-term presence in the main markets of EMEA. Obviously, the Middle East fits into this vision. GitLab is the DevOps platform that empowers organizations to maximize the overall return on software development by delivering software faster and efficiently while strengthening security and compliance. With GitLab, every team in your organization can collaboratively plan, build, secure, and deploy software to drive business outcomes faster with complete transparency, consistency, and traceability. Today, I'm very proud to share the stage with Saumya Upadhyaya. She is a senior product marketing manager. She's based out of Bangalore in India. And she focuses on best practices for end-to-end DevOps and GitOps. Today, Saumya will be covering the topic of managing security and compliance with GitLab.
Thank you, Michel, for the kind welcome, and I'm honored to be here today. Like Michel highlighted, I've been a product marketing manager here at GitLab for about 2 years now. And today, let's talk about some of the challenges with security and compliance in organizations and how GitLab can help with that. So let's get started. So let's set the context a little bit, right? It's true, software is eating the world, and this has been expedited significantly through the last 2 years, as a lot of organizations try to adapt to the new working style. So digital transformation is the top priority for most organizations that we have spoken to. It is table stakes these days, right? But this transformation has been really difficult for majority of organizations to achieve, as per McKinsey. And it is not because of the lack of intent. You're doing the right things. You're hiring the right people, you're training people, you're buying the right tools, you're working with partners. But it's really not adding up to the return that you are expecting. Excuse me. But it's really not adding up to the return that you're expecting. And in the process, you would have spent hundreds of hours and a lot of dollars, right? Because getting there or getting to the end goal has not been easy. Why? In the rush to transform, a lot of organizations are modernizing their infrastructure, right? They're moving to cloud, they're moving to containers, they're modernizing applications, they're moving from monolithic to microservice architectures. They're modernizing their tool sets. They're bringing in tools to cater to this new form of working that they're trying to achieve. And they're also modernizing the processes. They're moving from waterfall to agile-based development models. By doing this, they're hoping that teams can work together in parallel and move a lot faster. But really, all this just meant that they have a lot more to manage. As the modernization of infrastructure, application, and processes started, various teams in the organization brought in very different tools to manage very specific problems that they might have. They have a repository problem, they bring in a code repository. They have a code review problem, they bring in a separate tool to solve that. They have a security problem. Again, they bring in a number of tools for SaaS, DAST, container scanning, network scanning, and so on. That's just a lot of tools just to manage, let's say, your security posture. So as teams adopted Agile and DevOps, the tool chain complexity has continued to rise. And with that, the number of tasks that they had to perform and the integrations that they had to manage increased significantly. And that's not all, right? It did not solve any of the problems that security teams are facing. A research that was done by ESG Research across 372 cybersecurity professionals shows that security teams face a lot of problems these days. The number one priority is that they're constantly in firefighting mode. They're only handling emergency issues. Hence, they're not able to spend enough time on strategy or process improvements as it relates to security. Next, like we discussed in the previous slide, developers are adopting newer environments, newer languages to actually speeden up their process. But security teams have been finding it very difficult to keep up with these new hosts, new applications, and new users with their traditional security tools. A lot of the traditional security tools were built 10 years or more ago, and they don't cater to newer age technologies and newer age applications, new languages that developers are using. They're integrated too late, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on what the challenges are. The current security tools are great, but they're too complex for developers to use on their own. They require experienced security professionals who are very few, right? And the number of developers outweigh the number of security professionals, and this dependency can be a blocker. And current tools require integration of technology and processes, right? So from a compliance point of view, 50% of organizations still use a combination of spreadsheets, file systems, emails to actually showcase their compliance posture. Imagine the overhead of managing this, and also imagine if the state of the compliance program if the person managing or the expert managing the program decides to leave the organization. Therefore, security and compliance is a big challenge, and really to scale security and compliance, it means that we have to automate it and we have to empower developers to automating their tasks. Coming back to the problem we spoke about earlier, when you bring in multiple tools to solve different problems like code repository, code review, build automation, and so on, when you layer in security and compliance tools on top of it, it only compounds the problem further. So individual vendors offering static products for various different types of security testing, like static testing, dynamic application testing, dependency scanning, and so on. Each of these come with their own license costs and own integration requirements. When you layer this on top of other tools that you have brought in, just imagine the amount of integration that you have to achieve. It makes visibility across all of your DevOps processes extremely complex. We all know this, right? So finding and fixing defects, security vulnerabilities becomes more and more expensive the later it is found. So as we rethink security and compliance, we have to think about how do we start detecting these problems earlier? How do we empower developers to solve the problem earlier before they context switch and move on to a different task that they have to handle? So often we get so fixated on one single aspect of security that we go very deep into those protections. For example, if your most critical system is a reservation system, you're probably putting all your security efforts on that one particular system without putting effort on other systems that might actually be an entry point for any kind of security attacks or security vulnerabilities. So we like to take a look at this as, are you putting too many locks on your door while you're leaving your window wide open, right? Where others can come in and attack you. So when it comes to security, we think that it's important to go broad, not too deep, especially when you're testing most of your software. You have to test every single change as, at least for most common security vulnerabilities, rather than only saying that I'm only going to test my critical apps, I'm not going to test the rest, right? You need to actually test most of it. You need to assume that everything is a weak link, right? So therefore, you have to iteratively check your entire source code and not just parts of your code. It's important to maintain good hygiene when it comes to security. So you need to test everything automatically every single time a change is made and test it frequently. So it's important to integrate your security tests much into the process. Like we already said, the cost of fixing the bug, a bug detected later is 6 times more expensive than you would fix it earlier during the process. If you have already deployed, it becomes 100 times more expensive, right? So the later we push the time at which a security issue needs to be fixed, the time taken and the expense is a lot higher. And then you again face the organizational pressure of whether I want to leave my application with the vulnerability live, or I want to delay the release and fix it right now. So how do you solve for that? So in an ideal world, security and compliance will be part of your developer's workflow. How does this work? As soon as a developer commits their code, a pipeline runs with various builds and tests, and this also includes security tests. The developer should be able to visualize the vulnerabilities that they have introduced, determine if it needs to be fixed or not, and then fix the ones that need to be fixed and then move on to the next one. At the end of the development cycle, a security personnel will only look at security issues as an exception. They need to make sure that developers have not dismissed anything that they should have fixed. This really makes security teams a lot more scalable. On the compliance side, every single change, every approval, every proof of compliance will be tracked as a part of this process itself, rather than requiring to be manually collected subsequently. And that is exactly what GitLab helps with, right? All the scans are in the process and are automated within the pipeline, and it's out of the box. And because it's a single application, we can leverage the review app, a fully functioning app that will test the changes that are made to the code. It will test a dynamic application. It will do a dynamic application security testing. And before the code leaves the developer's hand, the developer has an opportunity to fix everything before the code is actually merged. No one else in the industry can actually do it today. And how do we do it? One of the goals that we have as GitLab is to empower the developers to deliver great applications. This is the only way that we can also make security teams scale, as they're so few in numbers compared to the number of developers. So to support this goal, like we mentioned earlier, the developer sees the results immediately of every change that they have made, including vulnerabilities introduced, license risks introduced, any kind of dependencies as a part of their pipeline, as a part of their natural workflow. They don't need to go to a different tool. It's all part of their natural workflow itself. And they can fix it right away without really moving on and then coming back to fix it. The application security team, on the other hand, they may never see vulnerabilities that a developer has already fixed, right? So instead of seeing 100,000 vulnerabilities towards the end, the security team might only see, let's say, 50 vulnerabilities, and then they can actually take a look at them one by one and decide whether it's important to fix them or not. And they're only looking at it as an exception, which therefore makes them a lot more scalable. So working with hundreds of customers across various different domains, we have understood the pain that customers have had, right? We have understood the pain they have in using different tools to do different things. So we created a better way to do DevOps. We created a DevOps platform that is really a single application with one single interface, one single data store, one single permission model, and security embedded within the life cycle or the workflow of a developer itself. Remember that GitLab is not just Git, it is much more beyond that. It includes project planning, it includes development, source code management, security, release management, deployment, operations, and observability of your application as well. So what does this help with? So it helps every single team in your organization collaborate in a single solution. It includes dev, includes security, testing teams, QA teams, operations teams to manage the end-to-end development lifecycle. therefore delivering a lot more value, a lot more faster, increasing visibility, quality, and security, and also removing a lot of context switching and removing non-value generating tasks from a developer and security personnel's workflow. And don't just hear it from us. Hundreds of top organizations across the world are using GitLab to help them transform their culture and processes to achieve DevOps success and to achieve digital transformation. I hope this gave you a good introduction into managing security and compliance with GitLab.